This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Good morning once again. Babu here. I hope my screen is visible. Can anyone confirm? Okay. So how about this command prompt? Right. Okay. So in the last session, we completed collections, or we can say the data structures. I hope you guys tried the set methods. Okay. Now we'll see the advanced level topics like file handling. File handling, as I told, like in the day one or day two, if you want to work with any programming language or any language, generally we should know how to define the data in a variable, and then if we have a data in a file, how to take that data or how to read the data using with the Python, and then how to display or how to write data to the file. We need to know, and then also working with the database, we should aware. Means the data we can store here in three different ways. One, using with variables. This part we clearly discussed, variables. And now we are understanding file handling. And then we need to know even how to work with the database. Right, variables we completed. We are understanding the file handling concept. What is file handling means interacting between text files with the Python. Interacting between the text file, like I want to interact normal text file and read the data from the text file and display it. Okay, so I'll open PyCharm. You can use any normal text editor also. So just I'm trying to use again PyCharm today. And it's not the file handling, is it mandatory PyCharm? Not like that. You can write normal text editor also, you can write it. So any file if you want to open, generally we follow some steps. Generally we follow some steps. Just assume this. For example, you are trying to open some text file, right? So see, there is some file called readme. I want to open this file. So we use something, right click here and then edit with, since I am trying to open with Notepad++, I am using this option. So we can read the data like this. The same thing, I don't want to open the file like this manually now. I want to write a Python code to go and read this file and display the data. Or I'm creating a new file, something, the file name is test1. The test1 is a new file. Okay, there is the one. So the test1 is a new file. You can also create the test file from here as well. Or see, now I'm creating something. Right click. Let me confirm this PyCharm is visible. So I just opened PyCharm. I hope it is visible, right? Yeah. Okay. So you can also create a normal text file from here also. You can use right click, new, and then see this is the file. I'm creating something test 100. So this is a normal text file. .txt extension file, right? So I'm writing some text here. For example, I'm writing Python, and this file we created for understanding file handling with Python. Right. Some text I'm writing like this. And remember, can we read any other extension file? See, I'm keep on saying here there is a normal text file. Assume I have some PDF file. I want to read that PDF file using with Python. And there is some Excel file. I want to read that Excel file with Python. There are a lot of extensions. There is a JSON file, CSV file. So any other extensions, see, the file handling concept here, what we are understanding, you can read any text files without any module support. So means with Python, simply we can read any text files. Okay, if there is any .txt files, the .txt files we can directly read with some options. So using with Python, we can read any file, any extension file. Okay, any extension file that is possible, but only text files means .txt extension files we can directly read with Python. We can directly use, or we can use without any module. But any other extension files, like any other extension files, like for example .pdf, something like this, dot whatever extension, Excel or XLS or something .json or .csv, some extension, whatever other extensions files we can read with module support. So which means, like, if you want to read, let's say for example JSON, you need to import module JSON. If you want to work with Excel, there are a lot of modules for Excel, and similarly PDF, CSV, like any extension. But any file you can read with Python. Any file you can read with Python, but only the text files without any module you can directly read it. Other extension files, generally we need a modules. So if you want to understand other extension files, how to read it, we must aware of modules concept as well. Okay, fine. So we are only understanding in this session with the regular file, which is a normal text files. So what is actually this file handling? So whenever if you want to read or write or append, the first step we always require to open a file. So first we need to open a file and then we process the file. So process is nothing but here it can be a read or it can be a write or it can be append. And then we must need to close the file. So whenever if you are processing something like reading the data from file or if you are creating a new file or if you are appending data to the file, then we must need to close that file. So generally we know in Python everything it's a object base. Even if you create a variable, internally it creates one object. Now same thing here also, whenever if you are working with any file, it creates one file object. That object need to close. That is generally we call it as a closing a file. So file object need to close. Okay, so now open a file, process a file, close a file. Process means here read we have. So read is something reading the data. And what is write? See the mode, we have a read mode, we have a write mode, and we have a append mode. Simply read mode is, it is used to read the data from the file. And write mode is what? Write mode is something, see the write mode again, two things we need to know. If file exists, it will overwrite the data. It will overwrite. Override means it will delete the existing file and it creates a new file. See, now this file already exists. Assume here I have something hi by. And if you are using the write mode, it will override. It deletes this hi by and it will create a new file, whatever the content you provide. Let's say if file not exist. If file not exist, then it will create a new file. Now coming to the append. Append is like if file is exist, it is okay. Now first we'll try to understand this. If file is not exist, append simply it will create a new file. But if file is exist, it will add data. It will add data at end of the file. Append means adding data at end of the file. Adding data at end of the file. So if you are using append method for the test1.txt, the new text it will add from the third line. That is the meaning. So I hope you got the difference between write and append. So write mode, if file is exist, it will delete that existing file, it will create a new file. In case if file is not exist, then it will create a new file directly. But append mode, if file is not exist, it will create and it will add the data, right? So same like write mode, if file not exist. But if file exists, then it will add data at end of the file. Okay, so I hope this is clear now. Right, and then we also discussed if you are using normal text files, you can read the data directly. But if you are using any other extension file, why I'm just clearly giving in the note, maybe if you try directly now today after understanding this concept, if you are trying to read some Excel file, it will not work. That is the reason I clearly mentioned here. You can read any file with Python, but you must need to aware of modules for that. The text files, you don't need any modules. Okay, now what is the syntax to read? So as I told now, Python everything it's a object based. So the syntax here to read the data also, file object we create like this, some object. So this is called file object. So this file object name is user defined name. So for example, user defined name means I am creating my script to read some content from the file or read the total file data. And you can create any name here. This is called file object name. It can be any name, but generally not a result keyword, right? So the file object name equal to, we use open is a function. So open is a function to open a file. Open is a function to open a file. See, we just understood that if you want to work with any file, first we need to open a file. So how to open that file here? We have a open function here. And then inside this open, there are generally two arguments we provide. One is what is the file name you want to open? And it should be a text file. For this session, we are only understanding the text files, how to read. So it should be a .txt extension. So let's say now there is a test1.txt file. You cannot just provide test1. You must need to provide extension all the times. Okay, so it's a .txt. So if you check here dir in the command prompt, you can see the file extensions. This is the complete file name actually. File name is test1 only, but what extension it is? This is something .txt. There is another file now, see, which we just created, test100. It's not .txt extension. So we need to check what is the file. So that's the reason dir is mandatory. So test100, it's not the one actually. You need to provide .txt for that. Okay, you need to provide .txt. So we created actually one file from here, right? So this is not a .txt extension actually. So we should provide that .txt basically. So let me rename, or let me just copy and creating something. See, you can create from directly or you can create from here. So test2.txt I'm using and just pasting this. Now if we go and rerun dir command, we can see there is a file name called test2.txt. So we need to verify when we read the file whether it is a .txt file or not, because we are providing the extension, right? So that's the reason file name .txt I'm giving completely the file name. And if you are giving a file name .txt, the Python, it will understand, okay, this file is available in the same workspace, which means in the same folder. But let's say if you are reading the file from different location, then you should provide the complete path. How to provide, we will see. And then comma mode. What is the mode here? Mode is something, which mode you are going to use. Mode is something, which mode you are going to use. Like I want to read that file, read mode. I want to write the data, write mode. I want to append data, append mode. So mode also mandatory here. And if you are not giving any mode, generally the default mode is read mode. If you are not giving any mode, the default mode is read mode. So what is file object? The file object name, file object is a user defined name. We can create any name. Okay. And coming to this mode here, let's say for example, I want to read the data. So read mode is like this. We use options like read. We use options like R. R means read only. Okay, R means read only. R plus we can use for read and write. Example, I have existing file. Already file is available. I want to read the data with Python. Simply can provide R. But this is default mode. Simply we can say optional mode. Why it is optional? This is a default. Even if you are not providing the mode, Python it understands by default mode as R. That is a read mode, but not R plus. Okay, R is a default mode. But what is R plus then? Assume I have some file. I want to read that content first and then write some content to the same file. So it will override. Existing file it will delete and then it will create a new file. But the priority is first reading the data and then writing the data. So first I want to read that and then later I want to write some content to the file. And then for write we have options like this. W. W means write only. We can write the data. See, write only means we can only write the data whatever you are writing to the file. If you want to read, that is not possible with W. W means only just to write. I want to just write the data to the file, that's it. So you can provide W. But whatever I'm writing, and then I want to read that data as well, W plus. W plus is something write and read. Write and read. So here priority first is write. We are creating a new file and then reading it. But what is R plus? First already file is exist. That existing file we are reading and then overriding the data. R plus is like that. W plus is we are creating new file and then writing the data. And then later reading. So write and read. And we do have a append. So append we use A. A means append only. A plus append and read. Okay, these are the options. I hope the mode part is clear now. What are the different types of modes? And if you want to read some binary content, let's say now, for example, you are using something Java program, and you executed that Java program, it generates dot class file. Or you are using something like C language, and then if you compile that code, it will generate some .exe file. So that file we call it as something like a binary. And whenever if you want to read the binary file, we use the options like RB. So RB means read binary. Same thing, we can also use WB for write binary, something like this. In case if you are using any binary file, then this is the way we read the data. You can use like similarly like RB plus W plus as well. But this one, if you want, we'll see later, maybe based on the time. But at this moment, now we will see how to use read, write, append. Okay. And now we discuss the syntax. There is a syntax. Now see, simply I'm giving the syntaxes for each and everything, like how to read the file. What is the option now? So the option is the file object name. Any name you can write. Let's say I'm going to write something FO. Your wish, you can write any variable. FO means here I'm writing like a file object. This is an object it is going to create. And then the file name. Let's say I want to read something test1.txt. Extension must. And what is the mode? R is a mode to read the data. Or you can also write without mode. By default, mode is read only. This is to open a file, means to read the data. Similarly, how to write data? How to write data to the file. So what is the option now? Simply we use W or W plus. That's it. And how to append the data, right? Append the data to the file. So already file exists, but I want to add some data. So you can use option A or A plus. A plus for append and then read. Okay. Yeah. So .py file, .sh file, .c file, .java file, .txt file. These are regular files only. You can read any file like that simply with that extension. These are regular files. So what is there in that file? It is normal text only, right? It's a normal text. So Python file also is just normal file. You can read it. We simply call it as a regular file. Regular file means it can be a .py, .c, .java, .py. These files are regular files. .txt this are. It's generally treats like a normal text file. But other extensions means like PDFs, something Excel, or the binary file which I just told. Those files are different. You cannot directly. Okay, so now we understood how to read the file, how to write data to the file, how to append data to the file. Now tell me, for example, see here, I'm going to use test2.txt to read the file, and then I'm creating now the script file now. So I'm creating a new script, Python file here. So day 18 underscore script. So what is actually requirement? My requirement now, I want to read test2.txt file, which is already available, in the same location. So file object equal to open of, and then file name is test2.txt, and then read mode is optional, but I'm just giving explicitly R. So open of test2.txt and then R. Now if I print F4, F4 is not actually contains the text whatever we have in the file, right? F4 what it will do, it is a file object. Maybe if it is not visible clearly here, then let me just go. Okay, I hope it is visible, right? These letters and all. Yes or no? Okay, so now you can see open the test2.txt read and then print F4. So what F4 it contains, it is a file object. What it means now, so if I run the code, see run, and then I'm just trying to run the code. So that is day 18 underscore script.py. Now it is giving something, the information like this. So it is an input output text IO wrapper. IO means input output. And it is saying that, okay, the file name is test2.txt. It opened with mode read and it is using some encoding CP1252. So the file object, okay, let me close this thing. Yeah, I think it is more visible. Okay, you can use the normal, like you can use PyCharm also, but since it's not more visible, I'm just trying to open this notepad. Okay, now see day 18 underscore script.py. Now if you check here, it is giving what is the name of the file, test2.txt. What is the mode it opened with read mode, and what is encoding format? The encoding format is CP1252. You know, when we create any file, every time internally the system it creates one encoding. Now for example, see but we never observe. Let's say, for example, see Notepad, I'm opening. Notepad, normal text editor, Notepad. Not Notepad plus plus. I just opened Notepad only. I just opened Notepad. See here, I'm trying to open Notepad. When I open Notepad, and whenever if I'm trying to save the file, see the save as option I'm using. And we are providing the file name and then save as type. Maybe like I want to save with the .txt. Let's say this is something like a sample. I'm just giving the name. If you clearly observe at the bottom, there is an encoding format. We never observe this, but by default system is using some encoding format UTF-8. There are different encoding formats. You can see there are different encoding formats here. So this is something, the encoding for every file by default, if you create one text file also, there are some encoding formats by default the system it creates. Now, I don't want to go with that, what is that encoding, because that is not my concept here. But you guys need to understand why that encoding system is using. Is there any reason for that? What is UTF-8? But why Python here it is using CP1252? Is there any different encodings? You have to try that, right? So you search it now, encoding formats. You try it. Maybe first try general encoding formats, and then what is in Python encoding formats, why it is actually required, and then which one it is using by default here. See now, for Windows, right? We are using for Windows. So you can see there is a UTF-8 is one of the most commonly used encoding. But Python, it is not using here that UTF-8, right? It is using something CP1252. So you search what is CP1252 encoding in Python. You'll get idea. Like this, you need to understand, say, this encoding, why it is actually using. Without encoding, can we create a file, or why it is actually using this CP1252? You have to search this in detail so that you'll get idea. So what is the reason this encoding? So why it is required? So basically it is using to convert into ANSI, but you need to understand by your own, then you will get more idea. So you can see here. Okay. Hmm. Yeah, so the correctly reading text from Windows, it is using this. So this is for Windows, but what is then for Linux? Is it Linux also taking the same CP1252? No. So that's the reason you have to know that Python encoding types. You go through and then check it somewhere, you try to get it, or you can maybe use ChatGPT and then try to get that all the things, because it will not use the same encoding again for the Linux. There are different encoding formats. Now see, for example, let's say I don't want to use CP1252. By default the system is using this, and then what other encoding we have? We just observed there is a UTF-8 as well. So you can write, if you don't want to follow this, maybe some reason, let's say your operating system, you created this, but maybe you are trying to push in some secured related other operating systems. I don't want to follow this CP1252, which is not accept there. You can strictly write encoding equal to, you can use for example UTF-8. So but how it actually use that UTF-8, you need to copy. It's not just a UTF, it's not just UTF-8 directly, there is a hyphen as well. So UTF-8 I'm writing. So again, I'm trying to run it now. If you check now, it is using the encoding format UTF-8. But you may think that, okay, encoding equal to maybe some number you can provide or some text you can provide. No, it validates every time internally. That's the reason I told that Python encoding types you have to verify and what is the type is used for. It will validate. Let's say if I type something AF, SAF, it is not a valid encoding, right? It just gives that lookup error. So lookup error is something unknown encoding. Whatever encoding format you provide, first it will validate whether it is a really encoding available or not. Based on that, it will read. So UTF-8 is available, so it is taking. But if you think, okay, I don't want to provide any encoding, that is fine completely. By default, it will take the Python itself based on the operating system. Automatically, it will take the encoding. Okay, now by default, it is taking CP125 for Windows. Now I want to print something, the name of the file. What is the name of the file here? Then you can use, let's say, see now, f4.name. File name. Which file I am trying to open? f4.name you can open. Which mode it open? Then you can use f4.mode. So these are like arguments you can use. See now you can see this is a test2.txt. It is actually file name is test2.txt. This f4 dot name, you can use f4 dot name, f4 dot mode, f4 dot encoding, like that you can use the options. But here, okay, we understood it is creating the file object, it is using some encoding format, these other things. But how to read the file, that is important, right? How to read the file, that is important. Just a minute. Okay. Now, see encoding I just provided for you guys to understand, but that is not required to know here. But what is required to know? You need to understand how to read the data from the file. If you are good with that, that is enough. But I'm just giving more idea. If you want to know about this, like see, you are asking me now, but you are daily using something notepad and you are trying to save the file, but you never observed this, what is encoding. So you need to check that all the things, right? So you try to understand, go through that. This is some terminology we are using encoding format. You try to understand, go through in the Google, and then you get it. It's not a programming. It's a just theory. What is that encoding, and then what are the different formats of it? Okay. But we are understanding now how to read the data from the file. So even if you are not providing encoding, by default it will take based on the operating system, Python itself, what encoding it need to take. Internally, Python will take care of that. Okay, now I'm trying to print what is the file name I'm reading. So that is the test2.txt. What is the option? From the file object, there are some names like this, name and then mode and then encoding. So you can use f4 dot name, f4 dot mode, f4 dot name, f4 dot mode, like that you can use. Okay, now select the basic options. We observed what is file object. And also, whenever if you read any file, we must need to close the file I told. So that is the last third step. If you see here, first open a file we understood, process a file we still not clear about this, we will discuss now. Close a file is required. So that is a closing a file object. So how to close file object? So if you are not closing, then what happens? So generally the file object we must need to close explicitly like f4.close. That is a file object name dot close. There are two reasons now. So one, if you are not closing this file object, and if you are trying to open the file with the same file object again, you will not get the data. Assume that you are writing some 50 lines of code, but first three lines you are using to read the data, but some other code we have in the file, means in the script file, and then maybe after 30th line again I am trying to read the same file. But if you use the same file object again, if you are not closing the file object, will not get the data. It says that okay, this file object already opened. So always best practice, you must need to close the file object first and reopen it whenever if you want. Let's say if you don't want to go this, then there is another syntax, automatically the file object will close. So then another syntax we will see in the next session. But first we are understanding the first syntax here, right? Okay, now let me write here the file object how to close. Simply f4.close. That means this object whatever created, it closed now. It's not open now. This is always best practice. We must need to close the object. And now how to read the data? Of course we have a read operation, but you cannot directly read with the only read operation. There are some read operators. So whenever if you want to read the data, we perform some read operations. So the read operation is like this. File object. See, every time I'm using FO, but you need to understand the name can be any name. And this is actually file object. FO dot read. I'm using file object dot read. This is one option. FO dot read line, another option. FO dot read lines. FO dot read of some size. You can use these options like this. So these are read operations. Simply, if you are using just R, it creates only the file object with read mode. It creates only the file object with read mode. But if you want to read the data through this file object, you must aware of these options. So that is f4.read, f4.read line, or f4.read lines, or f4.read offsets. So every option having a different behavior. Let's say I want to read the complete file data as a single string. Then you can use f4.read. Read complete file as a single string. Even if you have, see, with this file object, with this open statement, you can read even lengthy files. Like even if the file size is 1 GB, also you can read the data. That is possible. Python, you can read any huge files also. Like if the file size is huge, also you can read simply with open statement. There is no problem. But the problem is if you are reading that entire file as a single string, then what is the problem? We are taking entire thing as a single string now. And you need to think, okay, maybe if your requirement is like that, then you can go with read. Or let's say I want to read only one line from the current cursor position. So read line. So read only one line as a string. Again, it is reading as a string. What is read lines? Read complete file, line by line it will read as a list. Now each line or each record in a file will be a one value. So now I have a text file here. What is the text file? test2.txt. And in the test2.txt, assume I am writing something like this. So there are 4 lines now. So for this read lines, it will read entire file as a list. So it will read now, since we have a 4 lines of data, which means 4 records of data. Each record it will treat as a one value. That is the meaning for that. And size is nothing but, let's say I want to read only 10 bytes or 10 characters. So read only specific size. Maybe 10 bytes or 10 characters. Byte means, like, you can say simply like 10 characters. If you are providing read of 10, then it will read only 10 characters, like that. So first we will try to understand f4.read. So I opened a file with read mode, and I no need to check now print f4. We already verified what is f4 contains. We are using that f4 to display the data. So print f4.read. If I write f4.read now, it is trying to open test2.txt, and the complete file is going to print as a single string. See this file data now. So I got the file data, right? So whatever in the file, it printed. But how we know whether it is a string or not? It is printing entire file. So comment this, and then you can create some variable like x equal to f4.read. I am trying to use this operation like f4.read. Instead of directly printing, I am assigning to the variable. Why am I assigning? I want to check what is the type of this value. And then print x. The print x, it will print the complete file data. Now you can see it is printing the complete file data. And then I want to check what is the type of this x. So if you see the type of the x here, it will be like this. Okay. So what we just observed, the read complete file as a single string. That is exactly the way it is behaving now. Yes or no? It is reading the complete file, and what is the type of that? It is a string. So I hope this is clear now, how to read the file, right? How to read the file is clear. Any questions in this? So file did not open. Okay, you check. See, as I told clearly, you must need to verify first with the dir what file you are trying to open. Let's say I'm opening with test2.txt. Whether it is a test2.txt complete extension is there or not. Sometimes what we do mistakes, we provide the extension, but maybe while saving the file there is no extension. For example, there is a test 100, there is no extension. And if you have an extension, and if you are not providing the extension, let's say I'm just giving test2. If you are providing test2, what it understands now when I execute the code, simply it says that file not found. This file having some extension, you should provide that. So if you are getting file not found error, what is the problem? The problem with the file name. If you think that file is already available, don't check in the folder open like this, and then don't check in the folder. You try to check with dir command, then it will give you the proper extension. Then you can provide that extension here. If no extension also, it will give you, okay, no extension. See? No extension. But if you check here, like, you'll not understand. Maybe see, this is something similar. it's a file and it is a text document, but we never understand this with this file. So that's the reason I'm saying go with dir command here in the DOS prompt, and then you'll get idea and try to provide the extension. So for me, I provided test2 but not executing it because this file is not available. File not found error. If you are getting file not found error, this file is not available. I'm giving an extension now .txt. Now we can see the output here. Okay. So hope it is clear now. Fine. Now you tell me now, everyone, you tell me now. Now I'm going to use something. I'm going to use something. Let's say just a minute. Okay. So for example, I'm using something k equal to file object is there fo, and there is an option called read lines. We understood read lines. It is reading completely as a list. So file object dot read lines I'm using, and if I print here k, it actually should contains all the data from the file as a list. But tell me, what will be the k output now if I read? How many values it will be now? How many values it will be? Yes, please. You got my point? I'm trying to read the data from the file using with read lines. So read lines is a mechanism to read each and every line as a one value. So why it is no records? Why it is empty? You guys are executing and seeing, or how it is? It was already executed. Which one? Already printed the list before, so no data. So which list it printed? From where it printed? What is that? Why it is no data? Okay. So FO is actually what file object? The file object, through this file object only we are performing everything now. Now tell me, this file object we already used here, fo.read. In this file object, the complete data it is available, which is like 4 lines of data. So whenever you are using the same file object, see the file object is fo.read. This read mechanism, it already completed all the 4 lines from this file object. So the cursor it reached now already end of the file through this FO. Try to understand through this FO. And I am using the same file object again here. If I use same file object here, in the buffer no data, already it displayed in the buffer no data now, because this file object, the complete data it already displayed with read. Now if you are using again same file object for the read lines, there is no data in the file object or there is no data in the buffer. Simply it will give you empty. That is the reason we will get just an empty list here. Now two things here. One, we must need to close the file object. That is the reason I told every time we need to close. So f4 dot close, we need to close like this and then reopen this file. This is one way. And then you try to execute and see the result again. Now we can see the output we are getting like this. And when we use a read lines, each and every line it is reading as a one value, including with the /n, that is a new line. So we have enter here. Every time we have enter. So the last line we don't have enter, right? So now we can see there is no enter for the last line. Now, for example, if I hit enter, then save the data and rerun again. Now we can see it is coming with /n. So /n is nothing but if you hit enter here, one record completed, that /n, which is a new line, it is also coming. But now, new line, like if you are printing the complete list, it is printing like that. But we can use the for loop, right? So for I in k, and then print I. So what is this iteration now? We are using this iteration to display all the lines one by one. I don't want to see as a list like new lines. I want to print all the records, means all the list of values one by one. Now I can see Python. The next line here it is printing, and then DevOps and AWS. But the problem is, because of this new for loop by default, see the print function by default is giving one new line. Print function by default is giving new line, and there is another new line in the list. So that's the reason every time it is giving a one new line extra. I don't want this new line now. How to delete this new line now? How to delete new line? Anyone? How to delete a new line? So we already discussed, right? Yeah, Anusha, end equal to. And what is other way? So to delete the new line, simply we can use here with the print function. I think you can see the first session or second session we discussed this. I told clearly we are covering the basics in the day one. I told that we are covering the basics, and then the use case with this print you'll understand later. So this is the one now we are understanding. So what is the use case to delete the new line? So whenever we are reading the data from file with the read lines, every time we are getting a new line extra. I don't want this new line now. I want to delete it. Comma end equal to. This is one way. Now we can see the data here without new lines. There is another way. You can also use string method called strip method. For example, now I commented this. I am just using I.strip. So basically, the new line is the right side, or strip we can use. So I hope you guys tried these string methods. If anyone tried, maybe you guys answered. I don't know. So no one answered for this. Okay, now you can see the strip method. Strip method we are using to trim the white spaces. It deletes the new line, right? Yeah. Not replace method. Okay, so it is either strip or end equal. So I hope it is clear now how to read the data from the file. Any questions here, anyone? Now you can try. See, now this is a list, right? K is a list. Let's say, for example, I want to read only second line from the file, or I want to print only third line from the file. Now you have to think that, okay, K contains list, and then how many values here? We are reading from dynamically from the file. We don't know how many lines there in the file. Or maybe this file if keep on generating also, no, don't know. So you can just use now, let's say if you want to print the third line, then you can use index number 2. So print, I'm just trying to display something. What is this here? Let me only print then first line. Simply I'm writing like this, first line. The first line, I'm just writing here with a K of 0. So like this you can use. See, this is the first line. Or let's say I want to print second line, maybe from third line to till the last line. Third line to till the last line I want to print. So I have something again here like Java, SQL. But I want to print from third line to till the last line. Tell me how to print third line to till last line here. Third line to till last line from the file. Third line to till last line, how to print. Third line means index number 2. It's an index number 2. So for I in K of 2 colon you can use. Because index starts from 0, right? Then print I end equal to. I'm actually trying to print from the third line here. Now I can see third line is actually DevApps. From the DevApps till last line it is printing. So you can write now whatever we already understood the list operations. You can perform that list operations now. So you need to understand based on our requirement how to use that. Assume you are expert in list, but if you're not aware now, when I ask question like how to get the data from third line to 10th line from the file, and then you need to link that list concept and then get the data. If you're not aware of it, then again, there is no use understanding the list, right? So it is always like when we use some advanced concepts, if you are really good in basics, it will be very easy. Okay, so hope it is clear now. Yeah, so that's all then for today, and next session will be on Monday, no session tomorrow. If you want to insert, then you need to know how to use that insert method in list. Anusha. So you need to know insert method in list. Then you apply that insert method, and then whatever the data you have in list, you can append to the file. So that is how we need to do. We cannot directly insert in a file directly, but we are inserting the data to the list first, and that list data we are appending to the file. So first you need to do insert method in the list, then append that list data to the file. Okay, so that's the reason everything here list we are doing with the list. Okay. Thank you all then. Have a great day. Happy weekend. We'll connect on Monday. So no session tomorrow.